very special guests in the house. One, this young lady has been acting for such a long time, and she does her thing, and she is one of the funniest people I've ever watched on TV, and she's taken some time out of her busy schedule today. Please welcome for the very first time the very talented and very lovely Peri Gilpin.
Hey.
Oh, you are so, that's so nice.
I'm just telling it like it is, Peri. It's
Yeah.
I grew up watching you on TV, and I just wanted to thank you because it's shows like Frasier that are getting me through this quarantine, and I swear to God, I won't watch the news. I want to watch anything that's uplifting.
Yeah. And the writers really worked so hard on that, and we did too, but I mean, the writers just, it's so wonderful now to hear you say that, because I feel like all that hard work that went into really, making it, developing the characters, but developing a story that had a beginning, middle, and an end that really works, and it's being appreciated again all these years later. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. And
it was
Jerry,
so funny. We had time too.
Absolutely. Jerry, go ahead. You had some questions. I'll let you kick things off.
Yeah. Hey, well, first, Peri, it's great to meet you, and thank you for the so many years of amazing entertainment, man. I watched every episode of Frasier. Love that show. Hilarious. Just really an amazing, amazing show. And I wanted to
thank you for your service, and thank you for all you've done for us.
Well,
very
thank
much
you.
Appreciated.
That's very kind. Thank you. One of my favorite episodes on there was actually very early in the season when Roz and Dr. Crane are trying to figure each other out, right? And they're sort of, you're trying to figure out who respects who and who does what. And Roz tells this story about Lupe Velez. Do you recall that episode?
I recall it, and I can't believe you brought it up because it's come up again recently. I read that story in a book called Hollywood Babylon that had all these kind of weird, these sort of urban legends almost about Hollywood. Yeah. So I read that story and took it to heart. I thought it was a true story, and I would tell that story so often. There's a tour here called the Graveyard Tours, and you go in a hearse and they take you by where everybody has died in Hollywood, and you can see where they propped up Errol Flynn at the party, and all these great old, who knows if they're true, but they might as well be because people believe they are. So the guy started telling the Lupe Velez story, and I went, "You're telling it all wrong. Give me the microphone." And I even told that story before. And so when it was it was my audition, that was in the pilot, and I auditioned with that scene millions of times before I even got the part.
Yeah.
Right. So I really told that story a lot, but I knew the story, So even to the point when my mom saw the pilot, she said, "Did you write that?" Which of course I would not have been writing the pilot, but I don't know if someone at Frasier knew that I told that story all the time, but it was very much one of my party stories, one of my stories that I told. And then
that's amazing.
On Twitter, somebody started sending me these things that like Snopes and the fact checkers and stuff. And apparently that is not how Lupe died. And it's kind of an urban legend. So it's not true, actually. The whole thing isn't. I do think she was pregnant, and I do think she ended her life, but they found her the way she wanted to be found, with her, with a lily on her chest, but it's still really sad, but the rest of it didn't happen. It's awful, but it was it's awful. I'm sorry.
No, but I think the part that made it good about it was just, I think it started like the foundation, with Roz and Frasier, because if you remember, she tells the story. Frasier's at this weird Frasier moment that he always has. And then at the end, he gets on the radio and he's talking to someone and he goes, "Let me tell you about the story about it." And so basically he uses Roz's words, and to me, maybe I read too much into it, but it seemed like that was a definite sign that, okay, this lady's smart, I'm going to listen to her. She makes good points, and it started the foundation. I love that one episode. I thought it was fantastic.
I saw it recently too. My husband put on the pilot the other night, and I thought the same thing. I thought, I don't know if I appreciated it as much at the time. I think that I got what you got. I think that they made us have a nice relationship, a mutual respect. Less on my end, I think less.
Now, Peri, let me ask you. You graduated from the University of Texas, and you studied drama and theater, right?
I never graduated actually, but I did go there a couple of years, and then I went to school in London.
Oh, wow. So you did a lot of theater work.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you, how much more of an advantage is doing theater for an actor or an actress going into movies and TVs? Because I feel if you can master the theater, then you can do anything, because that's so hard.
Well, I do think that first of all, for Frasier, having a background in theater saved me because everybody else did too. So it was sort of a common language, including a lot of the writers and the directors. Most people came from theater. So that was really nice because, there's an audience there as well as cameras. So you're really performing for the audience. You're also getting it on film. But when the audience laughs or when they respond, there's just nothing like it. So you get that experience. So treating it like theater, I think, made it better. And I think the writers actually wrote it very theatrically, but nowadays you'd never see 6 pages in the living room. You wouldn't see a show like that anymore. So
Right.
It kind of was the last one, and Seinfeld and Friends and all those last ones that kind of ended when we did. Those are the last I think they're very theatrical.
Yeah. I could see that. I could definitely agree with that. And I tell you, what is it like to be on a show like that with an iconic cast it's very rare that you see. There's a lot of great shows out there. Don't get me wrong, over the years history, but when you have an ensemble cast like Frasier, and everybody loves Raymond, and the beauty about it is it's about Frasier, but everybody fires on all cylinders, and every character is sort of a main character, and I think that was the beauty of it. But how great was it to go to work every day and work on that show?
We used to say, eat, laugh, and go home. I mean, we just couldn't wait to get there. We had so much fun, and we just laughed all day. It was wonderful, and told stories. John Mahoney was the master of the hilarious story. But over the years, we wound up telling the same story because, guest cast would come in. So we had our green room, and then they'd join us. And so, John would tell the story about this, or I would tell, we all had the same stories. And so once, like about 11 years in, almost at the very end, John told a new story, and we had never heard this story. And it was about when he was an orderly at a hospital right outside of Chicago. And I yelled down the hall because David was coming down the hall, and I go, David, John just told a new story, but I meant, it's a good one. But John laughed so hard he cracked up. He goes, yeah, I told a new story. Can you believe it? So we would just sit back there and regale each other with, the same old stories for a decade and never get tired of them. It was so much fun. And then on set, when we go down to the set and work, I mean, it was like you guys are saying with the script. I mean, it was candy. It was the best writing and the best relationships and the most fun things to play.
Oh, wow. Gary, go ahead.
The writers always let us talk with them about it, so if we had, we had a question or if we had a suggestion, they would always listen. Usually it turns out they had thought of it before we did, and there was a reason why it was the way it was. And, but the conversation was always open, and that I found that's not always the case. And I think that was a big secret. That was the secret sauce of Frasier, was that everybody could talk about everything all the time.
Wow. Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I watched all those comedies that you just mentioned a second ago, and love them all. But I'll tell you, now I'll admit, I'm one of these weird dudes that I watch a movie or I watch a show and I like analyze, I get into what the writers were trying to portray, and maybe I look too deep into this. But I think the thing that really set Frasier apart from all the other comedies that I think made it uniquely special was when you look at all the other shows, that each show is a story. It's a comedic story of some sort, and then the story ends. And then you go on to the next funny show, on the next episode. Frasier, in my mind, was all about relationships. it was all these mini relationships within the story that every week, kept growing. You start with, Martin, and his two sons. You've got this very simple kind of a guy, and then these two very almost aristocrat type, snobby sons, and trying to, from episode one, build that relationship. You look at Roz and Niles, right? He's always making snide remarks about her promiscuity, and she's always, chiding him about being, stuck up and all that. Niles and Daphne, from episode one, they meet and in time form a relationship and eventually marry. Roz and Daphne, the two women trying to live with this crazy Crane family, and so they almost misery loves company. They become very close.
Yeah.
And eventually one is a maid of honor, I think, in the wedding down the road. And then, of course, the Frasier and Ross thing. I mean, there was like a friction, but a sexy friction. They were competing at first, and they were, they had one night kind of together, if you remember that episode. And
I remember that.
yeah, and then at the end they're best of friends, and they're very, very tight. And then even Roz and Martin, the father, they were simple people that connected. And if you remember, that character would invite Roz like to the poker games and things that didn't even invite his own sons to, because they had a common bond. And you go back and look at that all through the whole series, these relationships with each other were the story. It was stories within the story that made a big story. And I think that's the one thing in my mind that made this show just over the top, that better than all the others. Just an opinion.
I couldn't agree with you more.
That's good. Again, I might be reading too much into this, but man, they wrote this really well. They wrote it really well.
Life is about relationships,
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I do think that they made the ones that we all had and the ones that, with each other. I mean, one of the things I think that's so great about sitcoms is that you get to know these people so well that sometimes you laugh harder when someone responds out of character, and that's how well we know them, and so I love that they had real relationships where sometimes they were the best of friends and sometimes they didn't get along very well, just the way real life is, and that kind of, like, as you said, that was the story. That was the show.
Yeah. Peri, let me ask you, I know you've told this story 100 times, but I just wanted to bring it out there for the purpose of our viewers and listeners. You weren't the first choice to play Roz. It was supposed to go to, they tried Lisa Kudrow, who wound up on Friends. Well, so it really wasn't a big deal. She wound up landing on her feet anyway, but tell us about that. Like, how did you have to audition, or how did it come about that you actually got the role?
I had several auditions. I think I went in about 5 or 6 times for at the time, Paramount made the show and then they licensed it out to NBC. So now NBC and all those big networks have their own production companies, right? But this was at a time when a studio was selling a show to a network. So you had to go through the network process first, and then you go to the studio process first, and then you go to the network. And so I'd gone through several rounds at the studio, and then I went to the network. And by the time I got to the network, it was just between the two of us. And we'd become friends in the process because we had a couple of mutual friends. And so, we were young actresses, and we were like, I pulled out my old day runner. I had 40 auditions, 40 callbacks and auditions that pilot season. You're just going from one to the other. But this was really good, and we both knew it. And everybody knew that this was going to be a good show because the script was so good. You don't know if it's going to go, but everybody was thrilled to audition for it. So she wound up getting it at the network. And then a couple of weeks later, I was sitting at a restaurant with my agent, and I got a call from the casting director who said, "Do you want to come to work tomorrow?" And I said, "On what?" And he goes, "On Frasier." And I said, "As what?" And he goes, "Roz." And I'm like, "What about Lisa?" So he goes, "Well, now we got to make that phone call." So I went to the table and I said to my agent, "I They just called me to come to work tomorrow on FRAISER. And we tried to run. I think we actually left the restaurant without paying, and they had to come get us in the parking lot because we were like, "What is going on?" So I just went back. I went to work the next day, and everybody was really nice. I had been on a pilot the year before where someone didn't come back, and wasn't, and I know that's just not good for morale. It makes everybody feel bad for the person who's not there anymore, and it makes people feel bad for the person who's coming in to replace. It just feels bad. So, I was hoping for the best, and everyone was like, but most important was I had called Lisa because at the time she was dating. A really old friend of hers was Conan O'Brien.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think they were sort of getting friendly. They were starting to maybe date, but then he was up for his job for the Late Show. So the Late Show. And so I had read in the paper that he got it in the LA Times. So I left her a message and I said, okay, now the problem is, when are you guys going to see each other? You both got jobs on 2 different coasts. That's not going to be fun, but you're going to work it out. Yay. So then the next day, that night was when I got the part. And then the next day she called and said, this is your part. Do not worry about it. You go and you do it and enjoy yourself. Have fun. And so she kind of blessed me before I went, and then everyone was great. And then I played the part for 11 years.
Well, I know it's easy to say now, but I can't see anyone else playing Roz but you now. It was like tailor-made for you. I know it's, easier said than done after the fact, but, I just don't think anybody else would have did it justice like you did. I mean, you just were, there's, sometimes when you watch TV, you see roles and you can't picture anybody else playing it. I know for like a viewer or an audience member, it's hard to say, but certain characters like on Everybody Loves Raymond and Frasier, Niles couldn't be played any better by anybody but David Hyde Pierce. Just his, so, and I think that's the secret, the formula, the casting and the writing, like you said. We had Brad Garrett on about a couple months ago, right, Jerry? And and I always ask about if there's any ad-libbing, especially when you have sitcoms, and it's. He said, Phil Rosenthal, there was very little, if they did it, it was in rehearsal, but the script was so good, you didn't have to do any of that. And I think that was the same on Frasier, right?
Yeah, exactly. By the way, have you guys seen his new show, Somebody Feed Phil or Feed Phil? Phil Rosenthal, the creator of Everybody Loves Raymond, has a show about eating. He loves food, and he goes all over the world and explores towns through their restaurants.
Oh, wow.
And it's so good. It's so, so, so good. You'll love it. It makes you laugh. It makes you and you get to know town. You get to know town through their restaurants and eating pizza or, they're organic farmers or whatever. It's really cool. And it gives you sources too. And then his wife, who's an old friend of mine, is always with them. And there's always like a whole bunch of people that go meet him wherever he is. And it's always really fun. It's a great show. But I'm sorry. Now I got off track.
No, that's okay. No, I'm just touting the writing and the casting choices.
Well, that was what I meant when we would all talk about the part. Like if you'd go in and you'd rehearse on the stage while the writers were in the writer's room, and then they'd come to the stage and you would rehearse it scene by scene. And, we're on a sound stage. So have you guys ever been to see like a sitcom filmed or anything in front of a live audience? So it's just like it's set. So it would be the radio station and then the living room and then Niles' apartment or whatever they were going to do. And then the coffee shop. So the audience is sitting in stands and the cameras are between the audience and the set. So the cameras are rolling around. And when we shot, it was film. You had a cameraman on a dolly. You had a guy pushing the dolly around. And then you also had a focus puller. So it was 3 men and we had 1 woman who was a camera operator, 3 people and a huge camera apparatus, that was moving around. And then the audience was behind them on a rate, the audience was up high. So it was like watching a play, and you go radio station, living room, maybe you come back to the radio station, then you go down to the Cafe Nervosa, then you might go to the swing set, then you might go here, then they shot something earlier in the week that's outside, so they played that video back and get the audience real reaction, get those laughs.
Right.
So it was very theatrical. So the week before, when you're rehearsing, you could always talk to the writers and say, and often a director would be one of the writers or one of the creators or Kelsey or someone that you didn't really need a middleman for because they could make a decision, but you wanted to discuss it with the writers. So the writers would, like I said, half the time they'd go, well, we tried that already, but it doesn't work because of the thing that happens over there. Or,
Right.
Oh, you can try that. I didn't even think of that. Or no, because the NBC won't let us do that. Whatever it is, whatever it was,
Right.
but you always get a chance to talk about it. So you really didn't need to ad-lib because you would have rehearsed all week and kind of worked all that stuff out. But if you needed, like if something occurred to you and you had like some kind of reaction to something, you wouldn't want to just blurt anything out that wasn't rehearsed because you mess up other people. It's not like a movie where you're just the only one on camera. You've got a whole bunch of people on the stage with you. So if you blurt something, you could really kind of ruin a scene that was going well. So the other thing is, if you had a great ad lib and you just had to do it and it was the right moment and it happened, go for it, and people did all the time.
That's cool. I want the character of Roz Doyle. Now, I'm not sure. Was that Roz Doyle was a real person?
Roz Doyle was the producer of Wings, and she really was a living person. And she was English, and her boyfriend was Tad Mumford, who was a writer on MASH and a lot of great shows. And they lived on my street. I didn't know them. I found all this out later. But I did meet her because I went to network for Wings, and she produced Wings. And when I got to I had auditioned the day before, and then it didn't go very well. And they wanted me to come back and do a screen test for it. And I got there really early in the morning. We were shooting on the Cheers stage. We're going to do a screen test on the Cheers stage. I was going to be on the Cheers. I was just a wreck. And I get to the parking lot. I park, and this lady comes out and says, "Are you Peri? I knew you'd be here early. I'm Roz Doyle," and I'm like, oh my God. So she takes me in and she tells the makeup artist what to do and what to do with my hair. And she picks out my outfit and she keeps me calm, treats me. That never happens. It was just so nice. That was when I met her. And then I didn't realize that was her name. I didn't really remember, but it sounded familiar. And then when we started Frasier, they said that she had just passed away that summer from breast cancer. And they wanted to name the part for her because they loved her and they missed her so much. So it was sort of like a memorial.
Oh,
and
wow.
then her protege was our line producer, Maggie Randall Blanc. And at one of our first photo shoots, Maggie had on this great yellow kind of mustardy colored jacket, and I go, "That is so great. It looks so great with my navy pants. Can I please wear that? Can I borrow it?" And she said, "Yes, you can." I took it, I wore it, and then I gave it back to her, and she said, "That was Roz's jacket." So,
Jerry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Speaking of Cheers, Peri, I think it was like in '93, you went on an episode of Cheers. It was called the Woody Gets an Election, where he runs for a city council guy. And you played a reporter, I think Holly Matheson or something like that. And something that I found really interesting. So you go on that show and you do one episode. And then right away following that, all of a sudden, you're going to be playing, with Kelsey Grammer, on Frasier. And then down the road also, eventually, I believe you ran a production company and you worked with Kirstie Alley, on something in the production company. And then later with Ted Danson on CSI. So you do this one episode on Cheers, and then all of a sudden you're actually working with many of those actresses, in the years to come.
Well, I'll tell you the common denominator of all that. And I had done 2 series before at Paramount for Jimmy Burrows and the Charles Brothers. And those were the creators of Cheers. So I did a series called Flesh and Blood for them that we shot like 11, they aired 5 and killed it. And then I did a second show for them that we shot 5 and they never aired any of them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was on the lot, and that was because of Jeff Greenberg, who was the casting director of Cheers. He was not the original casting director of Cheers, but he did the last half. And he cast me in a part in Wings. Well, he's the one I wound up going to network for Wings, and then later I did Wings. And then I did 2 series next door to Wings, which was about, 4 sound stages over from Cheers. So I would go see the Cheers shows. I loved the Cheers shows. And I would go see them taped is what I mean. I would go watch them film it. But I didn't really know any of those people. But then I came over to Jeff's office one day, and he did this great thing where he goes, Peri, I just can't figure out do you know any actresses who might be right for this role? And he gives me the scene to read, and I read it and I'm like, oh, I just had lunch with Andrea Dishy. She'd be great for this. I start asking people. And he goes, well, we're wondering if you'd want to come and do it. And I'm like, oh, it was the Holly Madison role. I can't believe it. So I go, so I had so much fun. And it was the 4th to the last episode. So it was a 3-ring circus. Jimmy was pre-shooting stuff for the finale. He was picking up stuff from the week before. At one point, Kirsty had her baby on the set. She had her new baby. Right. And I said, there's a great baby shop right on La Cienega next to the Paddington's Tea House. It's so adorable. And she goes, do you want to go to lunch? And I was like looking over my shoulder, like, who's she talking to? And she goes, do you want to go to lunch? Take me to the baby shop. And I was like, yeah. So we go, and then she's shopping, but she's not going back. I'm saying to her assistant, should we get lunch? Should we do something and take it back? And he goes, oh, no, we're not going back. And I go, I have to go back. They'll fire me. They won't. So they took me back. I swear they dropped me off out in front of the gate. So I had fun. I knew her from that. She was so great. And I had so much fun working on that show. And then while I was auditioning for Frasier at that time, I think, because at one point, Kelsey, because all the guys would throw spitballs at you, all the guest stars. So you can see it if you watch. You can see them hitting me. And it was hilarious. Tiny little spitballs. Didn't hurt. It was just a little distracting. But he said, you should read for Frasier, not my show. You should read for Frasier. He wasn't saying my show. He was sort of like, you should read for it. And I go, I have been reading for it.
That's so funny.
I'm like, I did. So, so that was just like it was just an interesting thing. Cause I think he was sort of, when the show that's run 11 years ends, you're just in another world because you can't believe it's ending, but you're just trying to hold on to the moments, but at the same time, they're going faster than ever. So I don't even think he was thinking, and I don't think he went, oh, that actress is perfect or anything like that. I just think he was being nice. You know what I mean? I don't think he ever
Yeah. One of the interesting things I liked about your character, Roz Doyle, is now if you watched it, I've binge watched it. I've seen every episode. Frasier is pretty much the same. Niles, Martin, the retired cop, Daphne. But your character was one of the only ones that really evolved, because then you became a mom, and then you weren't just this promiscuous girl. And I think they really did a really great job with your character and gave her a daughter, and it showed a different side of your character. And I think it was great. And I mean, the audience loved you either way, but I thought that was really great the way they evolved your character.
I agree. I am, to be completely honest, I was always a little bit uncomfortable with, I loved playing her. I loved getting to say everything that she got to say, but I didn't feel that way in my heart. I wasn't her, but I felt very protective of her. And I really loved that I got to play that part. So that being said, I also had a best friend who was exactly like her. So that's who Roz. So, but then when I was actually working for that friend and doing a play. I was doing Midsummer Night's Dream in New Jersey, and I was sitting in my hotel, and the casting director Jeff Greenberg called me, and this is before cell phones. I don't know how he found me, and he goes, "Guess what?" And I was watching Baby Boom on TV, which is the Diane Keaton movie where she.
Oh yeah, Country Baby, the baby food.
The baby, yeah, somebody dies and leaves her a baby out of the blue, and she's got to sort of leave the corporate world and raise this baby. And I was watching it, and he called and said, "Guess what? Roz is gonna be pregnant. They're gonna make you pregnant. They're gonna make you have a baby. That's what's gonna happen this season." And I'm like, I'm watching Baby Boom. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking, what would it be like to be 35 years old and on track and doing your thing, and then all of a sudden being given this life, this person to be responsible for. So it was so weird that happened. So I thought about it for the rest of the summer. And then because she did have her baby, her life changed a lot. And I really missed what she had done with her time before. But I also really loved that she went with it and grew up a little and took on the responsibility and did the best she could and didn't lose herself. She didn't lose herself in it. But I'm not saying, I'm glad she had a choice, and I think every woman should have that choice.
Oh, wow. Jerry, you had another question?
Yeah. Peri, one of the things when I was looking, through all of your work, that I saw that you've done an incredible amount of voice acting. You've been voices on so many things. I was curious what that's like. You go to these schools, and you went to some pretty, prestigious school in London, to learn how to do these things. Do the things that you learn in the school translate to being a voice actor? Do you find are the two, when you're on stage versus voice, just completely different? Just wanted to get your take on doing that.
I thought it was, and then I did this movie called, this first CGI Final Fantasy, the first fully CGI movie, and the guy that directed is a guy named Jack Fletcher, and I got a workout. I was come out of there in a sweat. I mean, he was so physical. He would just through the mic, he would be like, do it this way, louder. He'd get you going, and you realize, gosh, you're so much better. It's so much more realistic. It's so much more urgent. We're actually moving around and doing what the character is supposed to be doing if they're running so I learned a lot from that experience, that to not be sedentary while you're trying to do those kinds of voices, like move around, give it energy. It's a great question, by the way, because I was shocked. Everyone says, "Where are your sweats?" I'm like, "Are you kidding? Where are your tennis shoes? Like, be ready to run." Yeah.
Did you set out to do that, or they sought you out to do voiceovers?
I grew up in commercials. My parents and family did millions of commercials in Dallas, and where there were like 50% of all national commercials at the time were shot there. So I grew up around that, and I knew that a lot of people worked hard to be voiceover artists. They do classes, they have accents, they can kind of imitate voice types, they can do all that. I never did any of that. So I didn't think I was the right person. I never really pursued that. But then once I was on the radio with the headphones, people started to think of me that way. And then once it was over, that was over. End. The end.
Yeah, we did earlier this year. I did an interview with Kelsey, and that was always a big dream of mine to get to speak to him. And he couldn't be more gracious. And when I talked to you on Friday, thank you for your kind words regarding the interview. And I know I was going to have fun talking to you. Now there's a reboot in the making. It hasn't been finalized yet, right?
No.
I mean,
Kelsey said, and it's kind of this. In fact, I learned a little bit more from what Kelsey said to you, but it's very much in the works. People are talking about it.
Right. Okay. I know there's not much more, but let me ask you a question, and this is pretty interesting to me. And I think this will work. Obviously, without John Mahoney, it's going to be a big hole. But I think the natural progression of things, they'll probably work that out in the storyline. But being a TV buff all my life, and being in the entertainment business, doing radio, doing stand-up comedy, I'm not a big fan of reboots, but I would be a Frasier, and I'll tell you why. Because what my thing is, if you had a show like Magnum PI and they're doing a lot of reboots, and I say to myself, you mean to tell me there's not a talented young writer in Hollywood that can come up with a fresh idea that you got to rehash all these old shows? Which, I don't know if it's a money thing or a marketing thing. It's already branded, maybe.
I don't, unless it's like, people love Hawaiian shows, and there have been 2 really good ones. Why write a whole other one? Let's just do that again. You know what I mean? I guess. I don't know. I hear you.
Yeah.
And Hawaii 5 too, but I loved Magnum. I love Magnum so much. Oh God, I love that show.
Growing up in the 80s, those shows, to me, it looked like they were having so much fun, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great shows on TV, like The Big Bang Theory, Frasier, Everybody Loves Raymond, a lot of newer shows. I just don't get the same feeling as I did watching those others grow up. And and I got to say, they did a great job on, CBS is actually really knocking it out of the park. The Magnum PI isn't bad, the new one. The Hawaii 5 they did well, and they're doing MacGyver pretty well too. I'm enjoying that. But then there's been other ones on other channels. I'm like, really? Do we need to see Lethal Weapon? I mean, and it didn't work for me. But I don't know. I just, there's all these young up and coming writers. I mean, take a chance on something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not in Hollywood. What do I know?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a great question. Can anyone come up with a new idea? Or maybe at least the ones that they're redoing are good ones. At least good ideas.
Well, yeah, they got to, like I said, and I get it. Maybe, it's not as much money. It's already branded. It's already packaged, so, it makes sense. But now, speaking of, Peri, this whole country is going through this horrible, horrible pandemic. And how have you been coping with it? Dealing with it so far? I mean, for someone who was always working and it's got to be hard just to have to stop.
Yeah. I'm a little speechless on this. Yeah. I believe it or not, you've stumped me. I don't know what to say because I have a mother-in-law who's in her 80s and she's actually had cancer. She's had surgery for cancer.
Boy. Yeah.
And it went great and she's doing great. Okay. It was actually so much more efficient in a way because of all the rules. You know what I mean? Because it's sort of like drop her off, get her out, get her in and out. They did it robotically. They kind of had to make a lot of decisions before she ever went in, just to minimize her time.
She's a high risk, right? Because her age and stuff. Yeah.
So in a way, there's been a silver lining for all of it. But I feel like we're all going a little stir crazy, don't you?
Oh boy, we're opened up here in New Jersey, but in LA, I don't know what's going, and it's just, you see, this is what I mean, Peri. You don't know what to believe. You see this news, and I won't watch the news. I'll watch for a few minutes just to get the bullet points, so make sure that the planet's not going to implode. But I'm watching, like I said, uplifting stuff, and now they're saying it's starting to spike again in LA. They were supposed to open up the studios in August, and it was September. Now it's October. I mean, they are filming, but it's not nowhere near to 100%.
Well, I did a really fun game show that Lisa Kudrow produces a couple of weeks ago. It's called 25 Words or Less, and it was really fun. It's a great game, and it was really fun. And there were just a lot of modifications, and it's just everyone trying to get back to work. So everyone goes with it, but there's a lot of things about our business that you just can't, this was fine. Meredith Vieira was in New York and we were all eating on, it was almost like Brady Bunch boxes. It's like this.
Right. I like that show. I watched it. Yeah.
I like it too. And I think this is working. I wish I was in a studio with you, but I probably wouldn't be. And I love getting to meet Jerry, and I probably wouldn't get to know you guys any better than this in
Right.
our, can I call you Jerry, or should I call you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I get called a lot of things. Jerry's nice, so that's perfect. I'll
Some
take
of them we
that.
can't say on the air. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, does it take a lot of the fun out of like doing the thing with all the? I know you got to be careful, and I wouldn't expect nothing less. But and the same thing what I was talking to Jerry about before we came on air. He lives out in Vegas, and the casinos are at 50% capacity. There's none of the entertainment is open yet, and what they are doing is like it's not the same experience. I don't know.
Someone just wrote, it's spiking like mad here, 12,000 plus a day. I don't know
Oh
where he's
yeah.
from.
Let me tell you about this gentleman, Perry, real quick. His name is Rob McCullough. He's an essential worker at a hospital in the UK. He's one of our biggest fans. And
Hey,
this
Rob.
guy, I got to tell you something. I want you to give him a shout out, Perry, because he deals with COVID patients all day long, and they're in his face. He's all around. He's up to his knees in COVID patients every day. And I give this gentleman a lot of credit. And he's a huge fan of yours.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for everything you're doing.
But
I it's just awful, God, for people like you.
yeah, no, he's a good guy, and but like I said, I hopefully this will be all over soon, and everybody can come back to doing what they got to do, and I don't know, Jerry. I wanted you to explain because I think you touched upon it before we came on air about how important shows like this are for morale.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to do whenever I meet folks that are in the entertainment industry is I like to sincerely thank them for the product and the work and the things that they do and that they put out, for the rest of the world to view and to enjoy. And as a military guy who recently retired, I was deployed 4 times to the Middle East and then tons of other, little deployments all over the world. And, I've sat in a dusty hole in Afghanistan, and you really miss home, and you miss a lot of things about your country, and you're over there doing what you need to do, and you'll get that very seldom, but you get that hour or two maybe on a day where you get time to yourself. And most people in that time, everybody's got their thing. They work out, they do other things, but what a lot of people love to do, and especially now with so many things that you can stream, is they get on the internet, they get on their computers and they watch a movie, they watch a television show, they just watch something that takes you back home. And it's crazy that, you can be so far away and it's such a, rockets coming into your camp and stuff like that. But for that hour that you're watching, a couple reruns of Frasier, you feel like you're back at home. And I've done it many, many times. And so I always like to just thank you. Thanks for, I know it's hard work to produce what you guys produce. It takes a lot of studying. It takes a lot of, of learning every time you get out there to just make the perfect product. But I just want you to know that product is sincerely appreciated all over the world by many.
Well, that's the biggest honor you could have ever said to me. And I know I can speak for the rest of us, everyone involved in Frasier. Thank you for that. That's very kind.
Absolutely.
Jerry, do you mind, how did you get into the military? Like, what was your path?
For me, it was my father. He was an enlisted man, so he's like a sergeant, in the Air Force. And I grew up, and I just don't know where it got into my blood, but I loved airplanes, and I still do. My father would take me to runways, at different airports, and I would just sit there and watch planes land and take off. And it's weird that now I'm in my 50s and I can still go to a airport and just watch planes take off and land all day. Something about flight is beautiful. And I dreamed that one day I would get to sit up in that seat and be the pilot. So that's what I drove hard since I was a child. I worked hard on my grades. I did my best to stay healthy, because if you don't have good eyes and ears and all those things, you're out. And I got very lucky and blessed, and I made it into the Air Force Academy, which is our military service academy in Colorado Springs. It's the Air Force's West Point. And then, things just worked out for the best. And I'm thankful for what the Air Force gave me. I've seen the world. I've been on all 7 continents. I've landed planes on Antarctica, you know, going and helping the environment and taking goods to the National Science Foundation, who's down there trying to help save the planet, you know. And so I've walked around Antarctica and places like that, and I've met so many amazing people and seen so many things. And it was really all because of, you know, the U.S. Air Force and what it did for me. So I'm a very appreciative guy of the service. I'm appreciative for the opportunities they gave me. And, you know, my father, he's in his 80s now. He didn't even graduate high school. You know, he came from a really poor family in New Mexico. And I like at age 17, I don't even know if he was legal. He joined the Air Force, and maybe he convinced him he was 18. I don't know. And, you know, while he was in the Air Force, he came out of it and he studied this new thing they were calling computers at the time, you know, in the 70s. And he learned how to run a computer, you know, and this uneducated kid from a poor family, and, you know, learned a skill and left the Air Force after retiring from it and did very, very well, you know, things like that. So our family has a lot that we owe, you know, the military. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes with it. Our families make a lot of sacrifice. But for me, it was in my heart since day one. It's just what I always wanted to do. And my brother and sister, 180 degrees. My brother, oh my goodness, my brother wouldn't last one day in the military. Somebody would tell him to get a haircut or something, and it would be over, you know. But there was just something weird about me that was just in my blood.
Well, I can believe that, you know, you're thinking us after all of that commitment and sacrifice from you and your family. And obviously you have a great relationship with your brother, even though he didn't want to go that direction.
Absolutely. We're very tight. Our whole family is. And how about you? You know, was acting for you day one? Like, this is where I want to go. You just knew in your heart?
Yeah. My mom was a school teacher, and I wanted to be a school teacher. And then she really burned out. She did special ed for 6 years because she had done it in Waco when she was at Baylor. She had done it in college during her, you know, getting her certificate and getting her education. And she just couldn't, they wouldn't let her do anything else, you know, and in those days they would do 60 kids with 2 team teachers.
Wow.
And I remember her partner was, I think they were both 21 years old, you know, with 60 kids that had all kinds of challenges and things they needed. And she just, after 6 years, she just couldn't do it anymore. And she did a community play. She did Picnic, and we went to see her. My sister, she was on the front porch. It was called Picnic. And there's this really dramatic scene where she's standing on the porch, you know, and the lights went down. And my sister yelled out, "Mama!" You know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Really didn't. I wanted to stay on the porch and be dramatic, and I wanted to be an actor ever since I saw my mom standing on the stage. Is so much so much the same. But you know, I just want to say this. I feel like there's kind of a military disconnect between us, those of us who we're not raised around people in the military. And we don't always understand, you know, and I wish we understood more. And yeah. I just have endless respect for you and all you've given to our country. Thank you.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do with the show, bridge the gap and get more awareness for our servicemen and women, you know.
Good for you. That's awesome.
And Jerry came on as a guest, and me and him are BFFs now.
That's right. You know, Carlo has me come on, and I talk about national security stuff. It's one of the crazy things that I love to read every morning and find out, you know, what's going on in Russia, what's going on in Europe. I love studying all about, you know, China and North Korea and what's happening in the Pacific. And so Carlo will bring me on, and I'll just to tell him, you know, when certain things go on in the world and kind of expand on what it means to the United States and stuff like that. And somewhere in the process, he learned that I'm a huge nut with you know, entertainment, and I love television and movies. I mean, people climb mountains for a hobby, or they read books. I watch TV. I could watch it all day, you know. And so
I could too. Well, okay. So what's going on today? Give me the international.
Well, there's a lot happening, you know, and a lot of it I think is based primarily because there's an election about to happen in the United States. And so you're going to have people. Yeah. Oh, really? Right. It's the only thing consuming every household right now. I think a lot of countries are waiting to see, one, who will win, of course, and then that dictates what foreign policy will look like in the future. Because, and I don't advocate one party or the other, but they very simply are going to have different ways of doing business. That's why they're different parties. And so, you're seeing China watching with a pretty resilient eye of what we're doing. They're pushing our buttons a little bit out in the Pacific, harassing some of our ships and doing some things, probably because they can right now. They know the focus is on other areas. Kim Jong-un is in North Korea is pushing the development of some kind of new technology. I think, again, they know that our eye right now, and it has to be, is on the future of this nation and what it's going to look like politically. So you get some of that going on. Europe, I love Europe, man. I could live there. It's one of my I just have a thing in my heart about Europe. And, the one threat that everybody looks at in Europe in every given day is Russia. And, there was a lot of discussion on whether or not Russia, interfered with the last election. Depending on where you sit, you'll have your view on that. And so now there's a lot of everybody's watching them very closely, to see what their actions are, as we're now just a few days away, from this election. But there's a lot going on in the world, but there always has been. There always has been. And even in our own country, my goodness, we're pretty newsworthy right now ourselves. We got there's a lot of divide right now that I don't like. There's a lot of anger that I don't like. And I'm hoping that things, post-election, one way or the other, no matter who wins, I hope our country is going to just calm down a little bit. And, we get back to respect and dignity and care for others and things like that. And you'd be surprised, a lot of people think military people, you say you hadn't been around too many. They think, that a lot of the military, they train and they want war. It's the exact opposite. We're the last people that want violence because, we see up front what violence looks like, and it's not nice. And, but we're trained and ready if we have to do those level things for the sake of our nation's security. And so in these times where we're not at war right now, I think we're all praying for some calm, and we're praying for a little bit of humanity and a little bit of kindness right now. At least I know I am.
Yeah. What's great about him, Peri? When I brought him on, I started this little segment called the National Security Scoop. And I would say, Jerry, what do you think about this? And he'd be like, well, if I was a betting man, and he comes up with these, I'll give you an example. I asked him about, how the White House had all these staff changes over the past 4 years, one after the other. And he told me, he says, look, that's not uncommon. It happens during every administration, but because Trump was under the microscope, it looks like it's out of context. So, and that was interesting.
Unfilled offices, aren't there an unusual amount of unfilled offices in the State Department, different places?
Yeah, there are. He started his administration saying that he was going to do that, that he was going to thin government because he thought government was too much in the lives of the people. And so it was intentional. But I also think as he was the president longer, he also realized that, not everybody in the government's bad, and there is big government out there. But in some places you need them. Our State Department is what does our national policy around the world. You need those people in these embassies all over the world so that they can, work with the United States. I've worked actually in an embassy before. And then as I was the commander of the U.S. forces in Japan in my last job, I was working with the embassy every single day. And you realize how these diplomats, they really, really are the extension of U.S. policy, to all these countries around the world. And I think he understood that as he got further into the office. If you look at during the campaign season, he said a lot of things. He was a very unique campaigner, very different than we had ever seen before. But one of them, and I can talk personally about it because I was there. One of the things he said was that I am going to make Japan start paying for a lot more. Japan is not pulling their weight. I will, cut our relationship with Japan. He said all these things about Japan. And I was the commander of the U.S. forces in Japan. So I'm the senior U.S. military officer in the country, with 54,000 military there. And every microphone I ever got in front of, the Japanese press would grill me on what is your president going to do if he's elected? And then when he was elected, it was like, is our country our relationships going to end? Is he going to do all these? And what ended up really happening is he and the Prime Minister Abe, became like the best buds. Prime Minister Abe was the first foreign leader to call him as President-elect Trump. And then he was the first foreign leader to visit. And they actually went to the president's place in Florida, and they hung out for several days, and they hashed out a lot of policy. And he and President Trump actually had many, many conversations, while I was in Japan, and had a fantastic relationship. And I think where I'm going with all of that is, you say a lot of things in the campaign season, but then when you're in the hot seat, I think you learn. I think all of us do. Every position I ever held in the military, I had a view of it until I was in the seat. And then I learned, wow, it's a lot harder than being the Monday morning quarterback and saying I would have done this when you're the person, the man or woman in that seat. And you learn and you get older and you get wiser. And so, yeah, there are positions that, still are undone. Some of that is politics where the two parties, don't want to help each other. Some of it is just because that's how politics is. There's always empty seats. And some of it is because the president, as part of his original campaign, said that he's going to thin the government.
Wow, that's amazing.
I think a lot of people don't understand. I hear you. He did say that. And I think a lot of people think those two things. They think that once a person gets into office, they're going to change their tune because they're going to find out a lot of classified information that the rest of us don't know. And they're going to, and then the other thing is, I think it's not only a military disconnect. I think a lot of people don't understand politics and understand what he means when he says he's going to, no government. I mean, he'll tell you what to do with your body, but he'll make sure, but there's not a diplomat, standing up for our country somewhere important, like maybe the Ukraine or something. So,
Sure.
So I don't think people always understand what he's saying or what any politician is saying, when they make
Yeah, Peri, that's a very fair statement. Politics is difficult. One, because it changes by the day, depending on what is happening. I mean, even politicians flip their own positions, the next day, depending on what the driving forces are behind it. And so you have to read politics almost every day to stay up. And I've got, good, close family members who, again, like I said, I'm very close with, and they will ask me questions. They'll be like, I just don't get this. And they tell me a perception or a thing that they have. And then I give them, a little bit of added information that they, didn't know or didn't read. And it makes them go, okay, I didn't actually realize that. Yeah. And it's difficult. It is, people are emotional because, it's kind of like, and please, I don't mean to diminish politics, but it's kind of like your football team. You pick your team and that's your team, and you're a diehard fan. And it's like that in politics in many respects, unless you're in the kind of undecided camp.
That's a shame.
Now. Yeah, right now politics is like opium for everybody. They're feeding on it, and half of the people, some people know what they're talking about, and the other half don't. And that's the irony of it.
Part of the problem is that you're getting people's opinion on the news as opposed to kind of real subjective information that can help you be objective, and be one party one day and one party the other day, which I think we all really are. I think we have different feelings about different things.
Sure.
But now I feel like with the news so targeted at their audience, it forces everyone to take a side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a unique time in our country. I mean, I was one of them kind of nerdy kids who enjoyed watching politics and elections growing up, and so I've stayed semi-connected to it. I've never seen anything like this. This is unbelievable. I mean,
I've never watched politics up until this year. For me, I would be home watching Gilligan's Island. Peri, you have time for 2 more questions?
Of course, I could talk to you guys all night. Can't you tell?
No, I don't want to, abuse the privilege. But say the COVID ends tomorrow, the lockdown ends. What do you want to do career-wise? Do you want to go do theater? Do you want to do a sitcom? Would you want to do like a major motion picture? And then we'll make this a 2-part question. What do you look for in a script when it comes to you?
I look for relationships as Jerry talked about, I look for story, and is it something I'm interested in? But I'm interested in so many things. I'm not, it doesn't have to be about somebody just like me. In fact, I like to learn things through, especially what I work on. So what I really want to do is I have a few projects that I've been working on producing that I'll either act in or won't or might or whatever. And I'd like to, I sound like it's such a joke, but I really would like to get these projects done, and they're close. And so I'd really like to be working on something that I've been working on for 20 years for sure.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And then a couple of other things I've been working on for 5 years or 2 or 3 years, and things that I would like to see come to fruition. And they're all very different. So that's what I'd like to be doing, but I can't talk much more about those. But they're
right. Obviously, no.
Different, So I'd like to be doing that, and then also like kind of creating my own opportunities as an actress, if it's the right thing or not. Instead of, I have done a lot of theater since my kids were born. They were born literally the show ended on Thursday. My twin daughters were born the Friday before, and my life changed so completely in that day that they were born.
Wow.
And I really, and that's, great. That's it was 2 people at one time. I just had to be there.
Right.
And wanted. So I've gone and done theater since they've gotten a little older, and I love it, and I'll always love it, and I'll always go do it.
Cool.
I'm really happy with everything. I just wish we could just all, I wish we weren't, terrified of catching something or giving something to someone.
Yeah, it really is.
One has her driver's license because she just watched the DMV, and there was a 10-day period it was open, and she just hopped in there and took her test, and the other one doesn't have her license. So, my kids are like hothouse orchids. They're becoming young.
I like that. That's funny.
And it's not great. It's bonus time,
Yeah, I hear you. What was I going to say?
Sorry, I didn't. I just look for great writing,
Yeah,
but
no, that's
hard to
the perfect
find.
answer. Yeah. And one of the newer things that you did that I thought was funny was the old guy.
Oh, thank you. We did that in 2012, I think.
Yeah.
And the women, the 5 sisters that wrote that, they wrote that about their dad. And I'd known them for years. I knew the Burton sisters for a long time. And they said, our dad, he was like the head of psychology at one of like in Buffalo, at the University of Buffalo, I think. And he retired and came to LA to be near his daughters and their kids. And he started auditioning for stuff. And he started getting like job after job after job. He was, he just got everything he auditioned for, but it would be like, a dead body or, third drunk at the bar or wearing like adult diapers. He just got all this.
Oh boy.
But in the best natured way, like this whole family all have the greatest senses of humor, and they're good natured people, smart. And he just said, just because I'm 80 doesn't mean I have a lot to offer, and he was like, he just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. He was still very active and everything. It was driving everybody crazy. So anyway, they wrote this thing called The Old Guy, and I played his agent who was trying to always get him to go be the face of, adult diapers, or come on, you can make some money, It was really
That's
fun.
funny. But yeah, I cannot thank you. You know what? Oh, before I say this, I know you're not working on nothing right now and you have stuff in development, but is there anything I want to make sure I give some shout outs? Is there any charities or anything that you'd like to mention, or any kind of charitable work that you do?
Yes, I've been involved for years with the National Breast Cancer Coalition, and they're going to have their big fundraiser on December 6th. It's usually in October, and it's usually on stage, and this is the 20th anniversary of it. But this year they're obviously doing it virtually, but it's an amazing organization of over 800,000 members with like chapters all over the country. And the woman that started it, she actually used to get a lot of her money from the Defense Department. And
Oh, wow.
she was on Bill Clinton's 3-member cancer panel. And he said wished he had a sign. Anytime she walked up, he'd just say yes, whatever she wanted, because, she was working so hard for her cancer. And she and the National Alliance of Doctors found Herceptin. She helped them raise money to do the test, but it's a drug that helps about a third of breast cancer patients.
Oh, that's good.
If they have the Hercept gene. So it's a great, great, great organization.
Absolutely. Jerry, I'll give you the last question and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, really. We pounded poor Peri here with all kinds of questions. I'll just make more of a statement. And
he's not going to answer my emails anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
We're done.
I have loved it, if you can't tell.
I just really, if anything, I just want to say thanks, Peri, for producing the amazing work that you produced. What you did, and you've been in so many things, but one that I'm personally just really attached to, of course, is Frasier. I love that show, and it's been a real, honor to get to meet you and learn a lot more about you. And I think this is one of the best things about the COVID crisis is most, big stars like you and important people, you don't have time to just sit and let America see you, sitting in your house or whatever and just talking to people. And that's been the real amazing part of this whole crisis, is that we're getting to know people and learn people and see them, when they're not on a stage. And I thank you for taking the time to do that and let us meet, Peri Gilpin. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was our goal during this whole pandemic. Normally, Peri, we do phoners, and that's all well and good. But, what happened is I said, let's start doing video interviews, because this seems like it's going to be the new medium now. This is catching on. But, let's bring out some recognizable, iconic faces and people and the whole thing for me was, all year round when I do the show, I send it out to the servicemen and women all around the world. But I wanted to do something for the frontline workers and the essential workers. And, just like Jerry said, for the troops, if for an hour, a half hour, that they can forget about this anxiety that this virus has caused, makes me a happy man. And seeing somebody like you, who's a phenomenal talent, I look forward to seeing more of your work. I can't wait to see what else you got cooking. But it was an amazing time, and I apologize if we went so long. But you were an amazing person, and you have an open door anytime you want to come on.
Thank you. And I just want to say that my heart goes out to all the people that are suffering with COVID or have lost people to COVID, and that are dealing with the ravages of COVID-19. And all I'm doing is trying to avoid it. And so I'm sorry if I sounded like I wasn't paying attention to those people that have actually had to deal with it.
Oh, no, not at all. I absolutely. Before we let you go, Peri, would you do me one small favor? Since you're a phenomenal voiceover actor.
Jerry, you're Colonel Jerry Martinez?
Yeah, I'm a lieutenant general is what it is. It's
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm an idiot. I don't know.
That's 3 stars, Peri. 3 stars. Okay.
No, all it means is I'm a retired old guy right now. Nothing else. So it doesn't.
I don't even have a star on Hollywood Boulevard.
Well, we know some. Jerry, do we know anybody that can make that happen? I know a couple of my paisans over here. We can make a few phone calls for you, Peri.
I think we got to do something. Yeah, absolutely.
Jerry needs one. At least 3.
3.
But before you go, Peri, would you do a station ID for us here?
Of course. What?
Basically, you're going to just introduce yourself and say you're listening to Animal House Radio.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, I'm Peri Gilpin, and you're listening to Animal House Radio.
See that, Jerry? Did I tell you one take? You owe me $10.
That's somebody that has experience with voiceovers. That was good.
Peri, God bless. Keep us updated with what's going on. Anytime you want to come on, you got an open door. And I don't know if you have a website. If you do, I would like to purchase an 8x10, and I want to send it to Jerry out in Vegas so he can hang it up in his office.
Okay, well, email me his address, and I'll make that happen.
All right. I appreciate it. I like
Sure.
to, I like to show my appreciation for what he does, and he doesn't know I have more respect for him than one of the only other person that I had more respect for was for my dad. And Jerry, it goes without saying. I've told him 100 times.
No, I'm just a very small piece of a large group of people. So thank you. I appreciate it.
But it's good to get to know that group of people.
Yeah, it's nice to get to know you too. And I think like you said, there's a lot we can learn from each other if we just talk.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for your time, Peri. God bless. Stay safe, and let us know when you're back on TV, because I will be sitting in front of that TV with popcorn.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. And Jerry, thank you as always for being my quintessential wingman. We'll see you all tomorrow night. And that's going to be our last broadcast for a week. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, Michael Nouri, who you might remember from Flashdance and more recently NCIS. So make sure you tune in for that. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. This is Animal House Radio.